The Kings have played very Jekyll and Hyde basketball at times this year. So for the next couple segments, we're going to play a little Jekyll and Hyde ourselves. And the Jekyll in this segment is reasons, Jason, to have hope for what the Sacramento Kings have been doing. And you've put together some pretty cool numbers on what they've done this year on the positive side versus some very, very big competition.
Yeah, I mean, so if you're looking at this, like, again, as a half full and optimistic side, the win on Friday was a great win. They played in Minnesota without De'Aaron Fox. It's twice they now beaten Minnesota. They're 2-1 against the T-Wolves, and they've won that season series as they're done with matchups with them. They're 2-1 with OKC, now the 1 seed. They still have 1 to play to decide whether or not they can win that season series. They're 3-1 against Denver. I feel like there's a little bit of an asterisk to that. They've never played Denver fully healthy with the exception of the 1 loss.
Hey, whatever. They're 3-1.
That's right. But they won that season series, and 1-2 against the Clippers, still with 1 to play. So only a losing record against one team. I mean, that's 8-5 against the top 4 in the West. That overtime win the other day was 4-0 in overtime in close games, decided by 5 points or less, which is a lot what you get late in the year or certainly in the playoffs. They're 11-6. So not only that, Dave, the other thing I was thinking about are basically they have the same record as last year, which we've been saying for a long time. But if we all acknowledge that this year is different, the one thing I was looking at last year at this time, I think there were 4 teams, 4 games above 500 or better, and the Kings were the 3 seed at that time. Well, I mean, 4 games above 500 is 10th, and that's the Lakers. Yeah. So if there were only 4 teams in the West above 4 games above 500, and the Kings were having about the same record, you could argue that they're better this year. And in that kind of realm, if we're all agreeing that the West is better, the Pacific's is all going to be either a play-in or a playoff team like last year, and you have all these matchups against these teams, and they're doing well against them. It's a really weird year. I know we've all felt that, but if you kind of go inside some of those numbers, then maybe they are doing better than last year.
I think you can look at that. I think when you look at what they've done versus those teams, and especially being able to show that they can win in anyone's house, especially in the West. And I think the other part, based on something we talked about earlier, Jason, is the fact it is amazing to me that they are 4-0 in overtime, and they are 11-6 in games decided by 5 or less, and they are by a large margin the worst free throw shooting team in the NBA. When you really think about that and how much free throws factor in to situations like that, which, by the way, now I'm thinking about this, Jason, am I wrong here? I never want to doubt your numbers. Would they be 4-1 in overtime? Didn't they lose to the Bucks in OT in Milwaukee?
Let me double check that.
Am I remembering that correctly? Because I want to say, didn't Malik Monk miss those 4 free throws in OT in Milwaukee? I could be totally wrong. Maybe it was late in the game, but for some reason that's clicking with me.
Yeah, because now that you say that, I feel like it. I thought I'd heard 4-0, but I want to double check.
Yeah. Either way, 4-0, 4-1. That's still tremendous.
You're right. Yeah, they did lose in overtime in Milwaukee.
Gotcha. So you look at that, and they've really only been burned once by shooting those bad free throws. They've been able to overcome it. And let's be honest, let's have a little bit of negatory honesty, if that's even a term, about Minnesota and that win. That could have bit them. You could argue that should have bit them. I don't want to take any credit away from the Kings' win Friday against Minnesota, Jason, but you watched every minute like I did. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to say Minnesota handed them the game, but boy, Minnesota didn't do themselves any favors late in that game either. They did no favors for themselves. I thought some of their play calling was a little questionable. Maybe not as questionable as the Malik Monk play call at the end of regulation, which was really just throw it to him. That was their offense in the fourth, and it worked, but it was basically give it to Malik and clear out and let Malik do his thing. I didn't like that at the end of regulation, but they won, and they find ways to win, and they play up to competition. And I think the biggest underline we can give to this whole segment is this. Based on those numbers, they are proving in a large sample size this year that they sure as hell play up to the competition with a relative amount of success. And when you're in the playoffs, there is no down competition. It's all up competition. Yeah. So if they're doing that during the regular season, if they continue to do that in the playoffs, they could make some noise.
Yeah, for sure. And that, like, so again, trying to compare this year to last year, like we do generally in a lot of things. Last year they were a 3 seed. Right now they are back into 6th. But last year at this time, Dave, there was one team with 40 wins or more in the West. Now there's 3, and the Clippers are at 39. So if we're agreeing that the entirety of the West is that much better, and the Kings have basically the same record, just a different spot in the standings, my point being is maybe they truly are having a better year, even with the things, and we can point out, and I know we're going to do it in our next segment, the hide segment, but things that have gone wrong, things they're missing up on, things they could be better at. So it's kind of a they're living in a world where the West truly is better. It doesn't feel, and also they're in year 2 of this. Last year, everything about it was exciting and fun. And I think when we've had some exciting wins to watch this year for this team, we've enjoyed it. But we've also been as frustrated as we can remember. I know you've called this maybe the most frustrating or least likable good team they've ever had. And I think we're kind of living in this dichotomy of 2 different things going on with this team.
And because things are always, can be taken out of context, I always want to follow up that. I have said that this is the most least likable team in Sacramento Kings history. And of course, what I mean by that is certainly not the likability of the players or the likability of the team. I mean, hell, they're in the playoffs. That's amazing. But too many times it feels like the Kings are the smart kid in school that does really well on tests, but never wants to do the homework. And they end up getting a C, they pass. But you look and you go, you're doing the hard part. You're acing the tests. If you just did the homework, the easier part for everyone else, if you just did that, you'd be an A+ student. And the dislikability part, again, it's not a personal thing. It's stems from the frustration of, come on, guys, you're doing the hard stuff well. Take care of the free throws. They're not they're expensive throws for the team this year. Make them free throws. Make free throws great again. That's what. Make throws free again. Would that be it? No, you get what I'm saying. Let's make hats.